Cliff Borough Council. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so I'd like to remind everyone that under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England Regulations 2012, good grief, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting, and the use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. So please switch your microphones off when you're not speaking and on when you want to. And I'll move to the first item on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
There are no apologies for absence.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest at all? No. Okay, thank you.
I assume you don't work there any press because it's all that.
No.
Just double checking. Don't follow that and council on. So.
No, it will get extremely self-referential if we went down that route.
That'd be more fun though, wouldn't it? Come on, the session is disciplining ourselves standards. We'll got to treat the standard like a.
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah. I've got some Brix's face just all walked in.
No. Okay. And is any comments or feedback on the minutes of the previous meeting from the 19th of May? Okay. People happy to agree the minutes? Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I was saying I wasn't.
That's right.
Because it was quite brief, wasn't it?
Well, welcome to new and or visiting members then. Okay, well, we've just had item 4 already, which was the training for the single sign-on. So that's good. That went very smoothly. And if any of our fellow councillors are watching, it will go just as well for you too. So that brings us smoothly to item 5, councillor training update.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So the report in front of you is just our sort of twice yearly update on training. There are a number of little bits of information contained within the report, but I'm going to assume that you've done your homework and you've given it a bit of a read through. It brings you up to date on some of the issues that we discussed last time, such as mandatory training for planning and licensing, where the auditor had noticed that some people hadn't been. All of that's been taken care of. We've also done some other training on a few bits and bobs, but nothing too major. And obviously, because of the death of the Queen a couple of weeks ago, we had to move risk management training, which is not in Zurich, but run by Zurich. But we've got risk management training, treasury management training, and something else, Emma, coming up in the next couple of months, haven't we? I don't remember what the other one is, but there's at least 3 this side of Christmas. Code of conduct. That's right. I looked at it today. It's interesting. You need to come along. So we've already talked about the e-learning single sign-on. So the plan moving forward is to let the rest of the councillors know that that link is now working. What we'll do is we'll get it moved to the e-learning link on the main front page. Then we'll circulate, it's working, all you need to do is go in, you click on that and you're in. So what you've got then is a list of your e-learning courses that you need to be completing. What we're also going to do is what staff have internally is when we have an internal e-learning course to do, it sends us an email that says, you should now do your e-learning course. The deadline is, and here's a link directly to the course. So when we put that link into an email, you'll be able to click on that link and it will automatically take you to that course. And hopefully it doesn't force you to do the courses in that particular order, and it won't tell you to do them again if you've already done them, but it should hopefully act as a reminder on a cyclical basis once a month that there are courses there to do. Now, if that works, then we're all fine and dandy for next year when we've got a new set of councillors in and we've ironed out all the problems. So that's why I will be encouraging people to do that, because I need to prove that it works so that we can use it going forward.
And they can let you know of any difficulties that might have cropped up that we haven't thought about.
That is exactly the point, Councillor Jeffries, yes. Until you start using it, we can't fix any problems that we've got. So hopefully the single sign-on makes it a lot easier for you to do that. The consequences of not getting good uptake as far as e-learning goes is that all of those essential courses, things like GDPR, we have to do them. If we don't do them through e-learning, you will have to come and sit in this room and sit through 3 hours of GDPR training. And those people who did it the first time round will tell you it wasn't fun. It was really dull, but it has to be done. So there's a cost involved to us in terms of money for putting those courses on, but also in terms of you for time.
It's time, actually.
So actually the e-learning does make a lot of sense if you can just get your head round just sitting and having a look through it. So that's not working. That's the e-learning. So in terms of training, the very big table with all the ticks on at the back basically gives you an outline of who's been involved in what, how much training each person has taken on. And what we will do over the next couple of weeks is recirculate the individual training plans that we've been completing and updating on your behalf. So paragraph 4.13, member development group is asked to consider. And there's a range of questions there that we've put forward just so that you can debate, you know, what does good engagement in training look like? What is realistic to expect councillors to do? What, if anything, can be done to increase engagement? Is it necessary to introduce sanctions? And what can we do now to improve training post induction next year? And these are the same questions that we raised last time, but it's just an opportunity for you to reflect on the information in the report and the current training position.
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing to say is that the single click, single point login is going to be a big help. I think the number of, it's anecdotal to some degree, but the number of councillors who've fed back in the past saying that they just got lost actually trying to find their way to the e-learning. Well, for a start, they don't have an excuse anymore. But secondly, it does make it a lot easier. And also to send out reminders to people as well about things like GDPR training and sort of data protection, all that kind of stuff. Ones where you have to have a regular refresher because, it's very easy. Some people sometimes treat training as if it's a one-shot thing, you're done and you're gone. But with some of these courses, you do have to keep up to date. And it's on a regular basis. Some of them, like licensing, it's every so often, and with some of the other ones as well, like the ones to do with excuse me, around governance. It is actually essential that people actually participate in that and carry out the training in advance of actually being on those. And I think that's something that we're worth falling down on. And so it'd be good to see this go through. I think that one of the things that all members on this group have to do is to sort of feed back to their own groups and their own colleagues, fellow councillors, and say, look, these changes have been made. Obviously, they'll get the emails out as well, but if it's spread by word of mouth, it all helps. It all helps to get it out there and sort of encourage people to say, look, the opportunity is there and it's a lot easier. And hopefully we'll see a lots more ticks on the little table to show how many of us have done all the courses. I've got a few views on this. I don't particularly think it's necessary to introduce sanctions unless it's a course that you absolutely have to do before you can sit on a committee, like the licensing, like the planning as well. And I think really there, it has to be down to the chairs and vice chairs of those committees to really push back and say, look, you have to do this training if you're going to fully participate in these groups. I'd like to throw it out to the committee members first. Got a couple of hands there. Councillor Phillips and then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that the last sort of term has been very difficult because of COVID, and I think a lot of people lost a lot of the motivation for those 2 years, and then maybe people were thinking, I'm not going to stand again as a councillor, what's the point in doing the training? So I think there's lots of things like that that's probably come into it. I agree with Richard. I don't think sanctions would work. I think the single sign-on will be excellent because I've got 4 different passwords for signing on to various parts of the various sections of Rushcliffe website. So single sign-on will be excellent. Just wanted to ask about, we've got a lot of county councillors as well as borough councillors, and they will often say, well, I've done that training at county, are we sort of linking into their training to make sure that their training qualifies for sitting on, say, planning here, if they've done the planning training in the county? And if it doesn't, how can we make it so they haven't got to do the training twice? Thank you.
So the councillor's learning and development policy, which was agreed last year at council, actually has a section that covers just that. So what we're saying is, whether it's with the county council or your employer or a scout group that you happen to work with, if you have done, for example, GDPR training with one organisation, you should not have to repeat that training with somebody else. So if you provide me with a certificate that says that however you've done it and it's current, that's good, and we will count that off and tick it off and put the certificate in our records. If we ever get audited, we've got evidence that you've done that. Very few people have done that across the board, whether it's their employer or anything else. Because we thought, actually, working with colleagues over at the county council, it should be fairly easy to get them to say our councillors have done these things. We got in touch with them and said, well, tell us what they've done and we'll tell you what they've done for us, and between us we'll work it out. We got a very basic list, but there is a measure in place now to say, do you know what, can we sort this out moving forward? Now, the difficulty with planning in particular is that planning from the county council's point of view is a very different kettle of fish to planning here.
Yes.
Yes. So that wouldn't work. We wouldn't accept planning over there as a substitute for planning here. But we would accept safeguarding or GDPR or fire safety or any of those more generic things.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. So just on the point there from the county there. So if they send across, say, I know I've done GDPR with there, and God knows how many other people I don't believe with. So if they send that through, will automatically on that, would you be able to dial in effectively and tick that off behind the scenes so it appears 100% on there? And what I say as well, if you haven't got the right list, let me know, because my two hats, I will speak to a certain person there and get it sorted on that one. So yeah, back to I think, the one-click works a lot better. Like I say, it's a lot easier. We've got to make it as easy as possible to do the training, because that's always going to be one issue. And we know we have some councils who struggle with using computers, etc. So, and that's understandable. We've got to make that as easy. I would personally say about sanctions, I think starting from next council term to say, if you don't do that training, you don't go to those committees, perhaps just a point blank, say before, and even say, speak to all the group when we've done the election, where it's group leaders, etc. So look, there's a month to this course, but perhaps we make sure the meetings and things like standards and planning don't start straight away, and say that effectively, if you want all people to do that training, they've got to have done the training before they sit on there. Because I think it's not just about council or not, we've got to protect ourselves as a council. And if it ever came to a point there was something around planning or standards and we put people on there aren't fully trained, we're going to be open to challenge. And also, rightly so, our credibility as a council is going to take a hit. And so that would be my personal thing I'd say. And if you don't do things like GDPR and they can't do emails, then there should be sanctions if it's suspension and withdrawal of allowances, because effectively you can't do your job. So if you haven't done GDPR, really shouldn't be allowed to access your email account, because effectively if a council straight away is going on to their emails, not doing any kind of GDPR training whatsoever, and breaches GDPR, what's our defence? I think we have to bear in mind, first of all, we're here to protect the council reputation, also our residents as well. So if that were to happen, I know what I'd say if I was the information officer. Go, well, how would you let them do it without doing the course? If we stop for an employer, you're not allowed to access emails if else on GDPR. So why should it be any different for council? No, we're not employed, but we are actually got a lot of access sensitive data. That'd be my own personal view. I think we have to be, and we've got specials on the new term going forward. I mean, people haven't done any kind of GDPR now. We should be perhaps really urgently looking at that, any councillor, because I'm sure we already are. So it's my first time back on here in 2 years. So I'm not sure what's happened in the last 2 years, but 3 years maybe. I think that should be some of the urgent, but we've got a fresh start from the very beginning when we do these, the finding out council from the very start that all the future candidates know and council standing again. That's what will be happening, and that's a requirement. If you don't want to do that, don't stand. Or stand for election or stand for first time. But that would be my proposal, Chair.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, one of the things that we have to consider here is how we could improve training engagement post next election, and things like the GDPR and the ones for training for planning, which just rolls on, will be ones that are very much at the front of that whole sort of list of things that people need to do. So we were expecting people to sort of engage and complete those very basic elements of training right at the start of their term. And, you know, again, it would be very useful for you know, returning councillors to do them as well at that time, to, you know, help and encourage any new councillors that come along at that point. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiment around the single sign-on, vastly improved, and hopefully it can then roll out into other things like planning as well and get that sorted out, which I think is going to be a bit for councillors. But no, it's really easy and echoing on all that, and it's good to see with the percentages as well for like the auditing that they're a lot better than what they were. Of course, just noted that these percentages that we've got in 4.7 are just for the makeup of the committee. Might be as well just to kind of know how many extra there is that have done it outside of the committee, just to see then what the uptake is for those areas, because of substitutes and that, where often with planning it's often been described it's difficult to get people to substitute on there, and it's just kind of but of course we've all got to have it because of mandatory because of being consultees on planning applications, but particularly like with licensing. I was just kind of wondering, in knowing that I've done kind of display screen equipment, just going down the report, is kind of where that's essential for councillors, because of course we're not sat at desks all day. It was just kind of what kind of viewpoint that kind of training is for councillors, when often it's some hours a week in the evening on a tablet, looking at emails, reading reports. Is it kind of where it's more gauged to officers who are sat in front of a computer all day and being mindful of lighting and not being in front? It's just kind of how that is. And I think it's also with what's been touched with using training from other organisations, councils or work, that I take it that they would be ticked off on our reports, but will that then also impact on the e-learning, that we then wouldn't be applicable for reminders as well, like the GDPR, because I've done GDPR at work, and I've sent in the certificates for that. But again, it's because it's a work one, it might not be certain aspects of what's in these modules on the e-learning. So it's kind of knowing if there is a certain module that it's been discovered it's not covered, or I think that I've done. So it might be worth something like that. And some of the others, like, again, equality and diversity, that's put together, but I can see that there's Equality Act and Disability and Discrimination as separate modules. So I think it's just kind of got to look at making sure for people on those kind of things. But I take it the email that people will get as the reminders, which I think again is an excellent idea, just a little nudge for people to know that when they click on that, that will just sign them in straight away as well. So that's even better, that then they're not having to find the e-learning, they get the email reminder and able to go straight to it. So I think that's excellent. That's been rolled out as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, a lot of good points there. It's I think this kind of leads. It was one question I was thinking of actually as well. How would it work if you did planning some training? This is what you're saying, that some training might be several modules on your place of work, but it corresponds to just one or different ones on here.
Yeah, and it's broken down differently on here, but kind of covered two in one. Of work like equality and diversity.
Any thoughts?
I think, I mean, if you had all the time in the world, I'd say do all of them, because you know that you're covered. We've got the evidence that says that you've done it. You've done the one that we've recommended. Everybody will be very happy. The pragmatic approach is you've got the opportunity to to do some of these things for your employer or another organisation where they might not be so accepting of evidence provided from another place as we would be. And I would look at it and say, if your employer is providing me with a certificate that says that you've done GDPR, I am going to assume that that's of a level that means that you can do your job, because at the end of the day, yes, it's complex, but the rules are basically the same for everybody. Equality as well. It might not be as good or it might be better than what we've got, but you've done it. You've got an understanding of the basics. Hopefully that should protect you and the council should anything happen. I think we would be rather unfortunate to be getting to the level of detail where we have to say, does it cover X, Y, and Z? Because we're going to lose people again. What we're trying to do with this is make it easy so that you don't have to do basically the same training for 2 or 3 different people all at the same time.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that sort of feeds into the what does good engagement in training look like, and what is it realistic to expect of councillors. So, you know, if you've got some training that's, let's say, GDPR, and it's split up into different modules compared to what we've got here, then you could still say, I've done these training modules. That would probably cover us for what we've got. But then again, it's unlikely that there'd be specific training about standards in your workplace, whatever, you know. So it would make more sense to do those. I sort of segueing into those bits, I thought good engagement in training would be that people at a minimum have done what's required for the committees that they're on. And good engagement would look like people then going on to carry out some of the training for the committees that they're not on, and other training that's just useful in the role in any case. Planning training, I think, is a good one. We get plenty of councillors come onto that who are not on planning committee, because it's a useful thing to know for engaging with the local residents and for being able to sort of stand up there and make a case if you've got your 5 minutes at planning committee for any reason. So I think that would be an example of good engagement. I think it's realistic to expect councillors to do that kind of thing. I think it's realistic to expect councillors to actually listen to the chairs of their committees and understand that they have to have certain training to go on those committees. I'm kind of coming around to Councillor Wheeler's view that you don't get a seat on the committee until you prove that you've actually got the certificate.
You have to sort of give
Yeah.
an addition, say that's the consequence.
Yeah.
You'll reach the converter all the time. You'll take it to our life.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe just, you know, as here, no read comment point, but also got to test council and let the rest. That's first of all, and councillors as well. Because
Well, yes.
everyone will be in front of the information officers as well, or the standards. Potentially, if they make an error and if the apprentices they do training, then
Councillor Jeffries?
Because we are now so worried about diversity, we're losing the English language. I spent my whole life teaching pupils from the age of 11 to 18 to speak and write good English. I now find that there are dozens and dozens of words, phrases you mustn't use because you're going to upset somebody. And I think we seriously need some information about the language which is acceptable. Because I'm getting, like many older people, completely thrown. My children, my grandchildren say, "Ooh, you can't say that, Mum." Why not? This is a fact. This is the correct word, and so on. And in watching various television programs, you see them on their things, and they're just using 1 letter or 2 letters for 2 or 3 words, you know, and you think, what's going on here? And the fact is, I learned this from sitting with my grandchildren. When you get there, they say, "Hello, Nana." One's on his laptop, one's on his phone, you know, and there's no conversation. And I find that, in fact, they are no longer able to converse. So I really feel we do need honestly, no, I'm not joking. You know what I mean. And the English language spoken by 90% of the people in the world is being completely destroyed. And if we could have some sort of course, you know, to really get to grips with this. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I sit in the chamber and I hear people who stand up to speak, and the standard of their spoken English is not really as good as it should be. So could we just, Chairman, think about, you know, doing something about this, because it's really beginning to worry me very much. Okay.
So, Councillor Jeffries, to put your mind at rest, officers have also picked up on both of those issues. So I have already seen a draft inclusive language guide, which one of our officers is pulling together. So that is primarily targeted at officers upstairs when we do emails, Rushcliffe reports, press releases,
Yes.
policies, strategies, all of those kind of things, workshop events, various things, because we also feel out of our
It's a
depth.
big hole, isn't it?
And nobody wants to intentionally upset
No.
anybody. That's not what anybody's
We
about.
can drop a big brick.
What we're going to do is, when we've got that right, we will write the guide for councillors, and we'll make sure that you get that so that you can use it when you're doing your own correspondence and talking to members of the public and such like. And it covers all of those characteristics within equality and diversity, all sorts of different information. And what we're doing is we're pulling that together from the kind of the up-to-date resources that are available from government organisations and other councils. So it will continuously change, and no doubt things will occasionally catch us out, but we're on that one. We're also looking at more involved equality and diversity training, both for officers and for councillors as well. In terms of how people are addressing, you know, their speeches and things in council, one of the things that we'll come on to when we look at the induction programme is some specific training about speeches, voice projection, using the microphones, how you address people at council and things like that. Hopefully, again, catching people when they're new, to improve the standard of debate in the council chamber.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's very true. The number of times that we launch into sort of speeches larded with acronyms and things like that, it is very difficult, and I'm sure many of us find that, you know, reading papers and so on, the language that we might have to sort of translate almost local government speak into what you might call everyday language for some of our residents is a thing that happens quite often. But also, again, we do need to sort of look at the quality and diversity aspect of it, and understand that some of the language that may be being used, may have been used historically, has certain connotations that are no longer acceptable, or certain people consider to be no longer acceptable. Sometimes it's a generational thing, sometimes it's not. We've got a lot of people coming through now who expect to sort of see pronouns on people's signatures so they know how to best address that person. Because not everyone wants to sort of just use him or her, there may be they or them and so on as well. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to look at, and we need to sort of learn how to best be a very, very inclusive council. And that will extend to, I would have thought, how we address the person who is chairing the meeting, whether there are a chairman, a chairwoman, chair of the meeting, how that work, because people will have different preferences around that as well. And I'm kind of aware that in other local authorities, it's got some people into quite hot water, shall we say, and we don't want to have that situation here. Welcome, Councillor Dickman, to the meeting. Just popped up briefly. Don't worry, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, so I'm just looking at here. I think we talked about sanctions. We talked about improving engagement in training post 2023. Does anybody have any views on increasing engagement? I know we've kicked this one around quite a lot. Is there anything else that any other ideas we'd like to put forward? Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the courses have got to be really delivered with some passion and some real engagement. And if I think back to the CPR training and things like that, we all got involved, and we went off piste a little bit, asking other questions, but it was really engaging, and we got to sort of do CPR on the dummies and things like that. So things
At
like
this point, that I have to ask to remind you not to use acronyms.
absolutely, yes. And I think if we go back a few years when I know his name was Dan and I can't remember his surname, but he really used to put some fun and engage with people and got everybody listening, and things like that. People like that can really deliver a training course well. So I think the delivery is very important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Some of the licensing training that there's been over the years has been extremely well delivered, and yeah, an engaging person doing that really does help, doesn't it? Yeah. Any other members wish to make points or speak on this item? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it was just kind of looking at the list of all the face-to-face training that everybody's done, and for instance, looking at the DFib and CPR training, I sent in, because I'd done it, I think, actually the week prior at our local cricket club, and had sent in. But of course, this is going on the internet for scrutinised for all the councillors to see and members of the public to see, but then would see that and go, all these councillors haven't done that training. Is there any way that could kind of be put that councillors have done that outside, that kind of training outside, to kind of demonstrate that there is some competency in some of these areas that we might do that are extracurricular kind of thing, that where it's not essential, like planning, licensing, face-to-face training, to kind of just show that a council has done this, or might even do it in their part of their job as well, and just adding that in. But just going on the point with kind of the engagement in it, I do think that sometimes you can get deaf by PowerPoint, and when you do get those, if mixing it up with PowerPoint and getting in, I remember the planning, we went away and got into groups and did like little activities and just kind of thought-provoking tasks that really helped, and then came back with what we'd discussed, as well as PowerPoint presentations.
Yes, that is very true. There was a marked contrast, I was thinking, between the training that was provided at the town and parish conference the other day on climate change, which was very well done. People breaking out into groups, using cards, very interactive, and another training session elsewhere that was 135 PowerPoint slides. That was hard going. Yes, so I completely take your point there. I think this, but we, as has been said already, we do recognise, and it is possible to sort of say, I attended this particular bit of training elsewhere, and some evidence can be provided for that. Then that does count towards the training records here. Okay, are people happy to adopt the recommendations then?
Yes.
Happy? Okay, so I feel we've discussed the information provided and we've made some suggestions and ideas. I know this is one where people do often come up with ideas afterwards, so if there's anything else, please feed back to the officers after the meeting on this one. But all happy to adopt the recommendation? Please show. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, scrolling not quite so rapidly down the screen. We have, that's gone completely wrong on my screen. One moment with me. Oops. Okay, item 6. It's gone tiny here. it resized the screen to the same size as the table and then wouldn't go back to the right one again. There we go. So this is the councillor induction programme. As we have local elections coming up May next year. I really don't have to remind you about that, but people watching may not know. Borough Council elections are on the 4th of May 2023, and we will have a set of training for the new councillors. and we need to look at what's being put forward and any ideas for engagement with that as well.
In the week of the coronation.
Indeed,
Yes,
because we won't be busy that week.
well, we could always write and suggest that he moves it.
I'm sure I
Well, it
wasn't the only
it
one last
was
night
to
that
be,
thought that.
A similar date in June, and that was the day. That's the day I'm sailing off to the field. So I'm quite glad
Okay.
it's been moved.
Well, I'm sure it's not been moved because of the cup final either. But,
Cup final.
Okay, so again, complex report here. There's a lot of information. I would like to propose that actually we kind of almost go through this stage by stage. I'll give you a very brief background. You've read the report, and there are some questions as we go through this, which will help structure that discussion a little bit better. So is that all right with you, Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting off with just, generally, you've all been through the induction process, some of you several times, Councillor Jeffries, but you'll remember that when you get your post, your seat, you get a little handbook from us, a letter that says, welcome, great to have you on board. Here's your handbook, and it contains a big long list of information. I've listed it all out in paragraph 4.2. So it goes through all of the basics that you need to know immediately.
Yes.
Where am I? Who am I talking to? Where are my key officers? Phone numbers? How do I get into the building? Etc. And it outlines what we call the induction program. And it's all in one book. And I know that quite a lot of people keep that book for the whole of their term because they refer back to it and use it as a guide. So that the first question that we've posed then in paragraph 4.3 is actually we're going to keep the handbook. We're pretty much going to take the same format as we have done in the past. Are you okay with that? And do you have any additional ideas for content?
No, I think it's excellent.
Good start.
okay, it's actually,
I mean, but, physical copies, sorry, we have it online.
I think that a physical copy at that point in time is quite a useful one, but of course we will always make sure that the content is replicated on the members' extranet. Could I ask you to remember your microphone next time? We can hear you, but all those people at home won't be able to.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, thank you. I'm a new councillor. I was elected in 2019 and I was at the count. So we were actually given these immediately after the result was declared. So I could read this that night. If I wasn't there, if I hadn't been at the count, when would I have got this?
So it would probably be quite unusual for a candidate not to be at the count when their results were declared. And we do try and catch everybody at that point and make a point of, I make a point of introducing myself, as a key contact. If you were not there and we wanted to get it to you straight away, we could email a copy out, because of course in your candidate pack where you've been standing, where you put yourself forward, we will have an email address for you. We will also have a postal address, so we could post you a copy. To be perfectly honest, we would probably even go to the extent of if we could identify an officer who lived in the same village and saying, can you drop that through the door, just to make sure that you get it as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, thank you.
It was quite exciting.
My view is yes, definitely keep the handbook. Definitely have it as a physical copy as well. It's useful because I think we've all been sort of through there. We've obviously been there through at least once through the process, and it can be quite stressful that evening when the results are coming through. If you don't know how it's going to sort of affect your life, you're not quite sure. Maybe lots of things buzzing through your head. So I think it's very good to keep the physical copy. I think it'd be useful maybe to have a PDF version as well. It's belt and braces, because again, people can get home the next day, dump a load of stuff down, and then they'll be floating around thinking, where did I put this? And so I think that'd be useful to keep it. Thoughts from anyone else? Councillor Dickman?
Yeah, sorry for being late for the first thing. I'm sorry. I honestly thought it was 6 o'clock. Sorry, it's 6:30. I know when I got elected, the other guys that were in Rinton were wiped out. My mentor was, I don't know if you can remember him, Martin Buckle, and he disappeared off the face of the earth. I'd got nobody to speak to at all, and I was dead green to it all. I didn't know it, and it would be good if some of the fellow councillors can just sort of come and chuck an arm around the occasion or something like that. It's going to be different now this next time around, I think, where we are, but it was difficult for me at that time. I didn't, to get to understand what and how the inside of a council works is very, very difficult if you're not sort of from that background. So if you can encourage a little bit more assistance from other councillors in your area would be very good. The guys at Kewith are quite helpful. They offered to let me come and join them at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, but that's the worst time in the world for me. So it's going to be different next time around, I think, because we've got a bit of something going off, but we'll see. That's just my little thing.
Councillor Jeffries.
It's good to leave and you've got that information in your hand, because friends, relatives, neighbours are really excited and thrilled that you've come in. They start asking you questions and, as if you know it all. And honestly, it's quite magic having it so that you realise that you've arrived and you really don't know very much, and they want to know because they're interested and they've been rooting for you and they're delighted and they start asking you questions. So,
Thank you for those comments. So I think we're all in agreement that we keep the handbook. The content is pretty robust, and we make sure that is all updated, ready for next year, which is great. So in the induction handbook is the induction programme, and the induction programme in 2019 covered 12 face-to-face training sessions. Now those 12 sessions were delivered over a 7-week period. So if you think back, you've been campaigning, we've had the excitement of the election, you've got your seat, and for the next 7 weeks, you're expected to turn up here on average twice a week to attend a training session. Now, some of those sessions are really important that they need to take place before the meetings start up again. So in terms of meetings, what we will have is we've had the election at the beginning of May. We have annual council in week 3. So you've really only got 2 weeks in between to impart some of the most basic information. Planning's only a fortnight after that, and you've got to have everybody on planning trained up. So there are some training sessions that are important to front load, have right at the very beginning.
As soon as candidates have been accepted, they can stand and put their name forward, etc. We ought to let them know then that if they are successful, this is what they've got to do. Just a short note or whatever, but warn them, because some of them, they've got jobs of work, they won't realise. Hey, up a minute, look, lad, in a fortnight, So if we could let them know as soon as they are accepted as a candidate at some time, let them know that this is coming up, because they might even go on holiday for a weekend or something. Honestly, so and here they are a fortnight later and haven't got a clue, right?
Very good point. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it's just to reinforce that point. I think you've got to, because I remember I did the same. I booked when I first got elected, nearly a week early after all that started, and I missed quite a few bits there. You don't realise at times. I think when we start having these sessions that we always put on for sets of candidates, and say, as Christine says, to put that out there straight away to let people know to put in their diaries. Because some people are probably pretty confident they're going to get in the area, depending on the results, so they'll know straight away. I know some people may not, or what have you, but we need to, like you say, give as much notice as we possibly can. And I know you've already done that there with like Saturday's FPL, so that could be quite a long day, that Saturday, for 6 odd hours. So I mean, that will be quite key, I think, to gather straight away, because especially those with childcare responsibilities.
Okay, so the 2019 programme, it was hard going. It was hard going for officers, and I know it was hard going for councillors as well. Unfortunately, because of that, we had a drop in engagement for training that happened after that. We had some really exciting sessions, but it was almost like a continual challenge to get people to turn up. And sort of by the Christmas time of that year, it really dropped off. And then we had COVID. And it was very hard, as Councillor Phillips said earlier on, very, very hard after that point to get people engaged in any form of training. And it's only now just starting to pick back up again. So what we would like to do is make that much better. Now, so I'm going to pause at this point because what I want to do is ask if there is any feedback on the 2019 induction from your perspective as councillors, some of whom were new at that point and some of whom have been around and been involved in a couple.
Councillor Williams.
I think you kind of touched on it on what you said about the officers' time. I think a lot of councillors felt like that with having to come 2 occasions a week with work, family time, all that type of thing. From my point of view, it did get quite a lot. And having to do that constantly for 7 weeks, it took a lot out of you. And with the meetings on top, and anything like that, and yeah, that from my point of view, and kind of getting said by Mother Hop is, you got another training course, you got another, what's this one about, and how many more is there? And it's, I think it was that everybody's been elected first off, there's the enthusiasm that go out, but then it kind of wanes because it's going so much, and then people go, well, do I really need to go to that one yet? And that type of thing. So I do think it was really good, and understanding that the first ones were the essential ones that to capture that enthusiasm and initiative from people, new councillors being elected and wanting to do those courses, needs to be done with going forward. It's just, like as I say, it was getting hard going, and it was very much a very long marathon to get through those training courses.
Okay, just one, Councillor, just one thing. I did think that has changed a lot since then, and I was returning councillor. Is again, it would be a big job for people to be travelling in to come here for absolutely everything as well, and there will be a lot more expectation amongst new councillors. I think next time that work will be done online, either on Zoom or on Teams, something like that. There'll be, you know, why should I have to worry about childcare? You know, because I live at the other side of the borough. Why can't we just do this? Why do I actually have to come into the arena to have the bit of training? I think there might be some explanation about that. And we need to think about what could be provided face to face versus what could be done virtually, and see what might work for people, or even do it hybrid in some cases. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, that was one of my 2 points, was that where we can do online, or preferably hybrid, like I say, because people actually want to come in and sort of get the feel of it. But I think you've got to be, as Councillor Williams says, when you first start and have all those courses, I mean, it takes a lot out. You know, I've gone on a by-election, there was nothing then. When it was a year later, the full election, and we did all the training courses, I thought it was quite a lot, especially if you're not used to that. You know, if you're coming straight in from never role or never training, go straight in that. And like I say, it can be a case where it's just too much. So if we could perhaps look at, I think, where we do the most, what has to be done, obviously some of that has to be done by the role, absolutely, that's done straight up, and maybe even with the extranet to load up as much information as possible, even if it's going to be like the presentations you're going to present, that, like they say, the death by PowerPoint, all on there, and say to people, look, we're going to be going through this, but it's all on there now. If you can read it in your own time, you know, if you're able to digest it, do that now, because it'll give you that some of that information. You've got questions, we will cover that at a later meeting, you know, 2-3 weeks, 4 times. That way people want that information, because I say everyone learns a different way. There'll be some people who could happily sit there for 12 hours, read on the extranet and be ready to go, and other people would struggle. So I think if we can, if some people are eager to learn and not eager, who can have got the time to digest that, great. Or other people who have got commitments can perhaps say on a Sunday morning for an hour, I'm going to sit there and over coffee and do an hour or so, and do an hour each there just to get ahead. Because as I said, we will have people on holidays or we put a lot of commitments to one side because they've been out there campaigning 4 or 5 weeks. We have to go and, spend the day with the kids before they forget what they look like, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, we've got to bear that in mind to get that balance right as well with people, and also stuff in the community, parish councils, et cetera, et cetera. It does take a lot of that time up.
Richard, Councillor Dickman.
Thanks. There's one thing, just looking on here, these training sessions, unless I'm missing out on something, and like tonight, it's not listed here on this calendar. Shouldn't it be on a calendar somewhere? I've noticed them in the past. They've been on a calendar. There's nothing there tonight, though. Sometimes they've been listed there, haven't they? It's all right, they come through on the Democratic Service little thing. Unless I've got the wrong one, then I'm looking at. Right, okay. I'll look for it.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Just from Councillor Wheeler just saying about having the slides up online, that even if it's for some of the courses where councillors weren't able to, because I think some of them at the end, there were only one day that I think the course was on, whereas like the essential like planning, licensing, they were put because making sure that people did it, it was more accessible, that it was like a couple of days, afternoon or evening. But with some of the other ones that kind of at the end of it were only on the one day, when they happened, is there a way of them being kind of videoed and recorded to then that be put up for councillors who weren't able to do it, that they can see the slides, but they can also kind of see what happened as in part of the training? So if there was anything that wasn't on the slides that took place, because like councillor, people digest and people learn differently. People learn from information reading a book, and people learn from doing a practical demonstration. So if there was just kind of showing that of what happened as part of the training, then maybe people can just go and refer back, but also people who weren't able to go to it can then see what was discussed and shown.
Yeah, that's good points, I think. And I think another thing as well is to remind people when they are, elected, and it doesn't happen everywhere. Talk to your employer. That is quite an essential thing. Talk to your employer and let them know that you've been elected, and that you might need to have some flexibility or some time off. I appreciate that every single employer is going to be different in this respect, and perhaps some less sympathetic than others, but it is an important thing because it's a big change for a lot of people's lives, and to having several hours more commitment, strange times, and we don't know what people will be working. Some people will be working 9 to 5, some people will be working shifts, some people will be working in hospitality. A wide range of people from all walks of life is what we want to see on the council, and people need to make other parts of their life, their daily working life, aware of how that's going to possibly impinge on it. Okay, back to you.
So in paragraph 4.8, we've put forward our proposals for the induction programme for this year. And what we've really thought very, very hard about is what is absolutely essential that you know from the very beginning, and how can we condense that into a period of time that keeps your attention, keeps everybody engaged, can be done in an interactive way, but also allows you to get to grips with your new role. You might be on a parish council, as you've said, you're exhausted, you've been out campaigning, you've forgotten what the kids look like, and all of those things. So what we've done is we're proposing, and it's summarised in this paragraph. There's a longer version in the appendix, but we're proposing 3 sessions. So the first one is just a couple of hours. So we've got a window, one evening, and it's the week after the election. So you've got the weekend of the coronation, any bank holiday that might be happening at that point in time. You've got a bit of time to just relax and get to grips with what's going on. And then on the Wednesday evening, everybody comes in here and does what we call admin and logistics. So if you've never been speed dating, that's what we're proposing. So this room will be set up with lots of different stations, and you'll go over to that corner and fill in your HR form with people from HR. And in that corner, you'll talk to IT about your email. And over here, you might be talking to Emma about your register of interest. And we'll have people all around ready to fill in all of those bits of paperwork with you. We'll also provide refreshments and officers will be on hand, and you can start to get to know people. Now, obviously, you know we are, you know us. Any new councillors coming in won't know us and they won't know you either. So it's about building those relationships. But essentially that's session number 1. Session number 2 is the following Saturday. So you've only had a couple of days, and it's an all-day session. And it goes through all of the really fundamental, essential stuff that you need to know about how a council works, how the meetings work, your position, what you're doing in the community as far as your leadership role is concerned, how all of the different committees and meetings work. And it's all in one day with lunch, hopefully getting some of our returning councillors, cabinet members and such like to come in and do a bit of an information slot about how they find it, how they work and such like, and keeping it as interactive and as enjoyable as we can. And then a third session, which is in the evening of the following Wednesday. It's that bigger picture stuff. The council's partners, leisure, streetwise, all of the people that help us do our stuff, housing and such like, come and find out about them, but also find out about some of the really big projects that the council is working on at the moment. So if it was today, we'd be looking at displays about being a marina and the crematorium, maybe the Freeport and Development Corporation, some of those big things that they're going to get coming up in meetings and decisions about later on, but at least they've got a bit of context. So again, a very interactive session, mainly based on an exhibition style rather than a sit down and listen to us talking.
It's vital, Chairman, that you've got all the returning councillors there, because they are the people who can make this evening a huge success. Because new people might not know anyone much, and you're standing there. You don't look an idiot, but you feel an idiot. You don't know really who to talk to, and somebody looks friendly, but then you're put off because they might be an officer, they might not be another councillor. So the success of this last evening depends on all the returning councillors.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very important that existing councillors so engage with that. I like the idea of breaking this up into 3 distinct chunks like this and sort of flagging them up very, very clearly what they're about. I think if new councillors in particular sort of get that, I think it's very important they have that, like admin and logistics one as the first one. I think that's very, very good. And then those ones and making sure that people know, because these are very clear dates with very clear headings that can be flagged up to people who are candidates in advance, so that they can have those dates in the diary straight away, regardless of anything else almost. They can have those 3 dates in the diary. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, again, I'm glad that echoing what you're saying about the admin and logistics, that concept's carrying on, because I felt that it worked really well, that you could just go to whoever and get it all sorted out and seen and just bibbing and bobbing around and meeting people. And also it helped because it was the first event that new councillors came to, that you also were able just to go and say hello to them, because you saw them at the count, but you might not necessarily say hello because you don't know who they are or where they're from or anything like that. But it kind of was a session as well that helped break the ice a little bit with some of the new councillors, that you're able to go and just speak to them, you're relaxed, the count's done, that day's done now, and you're getting down to business and work on it. I think with what my comments are on the 7 weeks and 12, it's good to see that they're being put into 3 sessions. What's the plan for if people can't make these sessions, particularly session 2?
I think our plan is that if we circulate the dates in advance, there would be an expectation that you would be able to come, that you would make yourself available. It is not immediately after the election and the count, it's the following week. And there is so much information to be in there. The expectation is that you will come. If you are a new councillor, it is vital that you are at that session. If you're a returning councillor, most of that stuff you already know. By all means, come and spend the day with us if you want to, and we'd be lovely to have your experience to share and to get to know people, and that's great. But in terms of who you actually need there, it's those new councillors.
I understand and appreciate that, but of course you are going to get the odd person who can't, for whatever reason. Again, maybe the job that they just can't get any time off to come and do a whole day, or personal circumstances. So with some of those trainings, they're not going to get another opportunity to do that. So I'm just kind of, what is the plan B for anybody who can't do that? I know with the first session, they can come in and book an appointment to go and see people in the offices, but with the training and what the knowledge that they're going to get on that day, because of it being on the one day, what would happen if somebody couldn't turn up to it?
Councillor Jeffries.
Well, I'm listening to what you say, but people who've put their names forward must have some idea of what it entails. And if you are a borough councillor, you've got to take it seriously. Those people out there have given you the one thing that they have, and that is their vote. And you've got to take this job seriously. It's not a bit of fun. We'll do it. Well, perhaps I'll go. And then, yeah, there might be something coming up. I'd rather go to that. No, it's not like that. What I really want to say, Chairman, is outside bodies. Now, I have been a county councillor and I've been a borough councillor. You have a lot of work to do, you're on a lot of committees and you are committed. This is a serious commitment. But the outside bodies for me have always been absolutely magic, because the whole of the time I've been on drainage boards. These are experts, these are people who know what they're talking about. They're absolutely fantastic. I love them to bits and I have an input, and what they do is absolutely magical, and so on. So I'm one of the lucky ones, and I've got these lovely outside bodies, and I'm sorry that I won't be standing again and I won't be able to do that anymore, but I've absolutely enjoyed every minute. And we need, Chairman, to let our new councillors know what is entailed if you go on an outside body, because they could find themselves on an outside body and they've got a clue what it's all about. So perhaps could you weave that in as well? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a lot of other organisations out there that council is involved with. One of the things that I think that perhaps people coming to being a councillor for the first time are not aware of is the role that you have within your community, other than just being a councillor, the number of other groups that you might be involved with.
Yeah.
Sometimes through your role as a councillor, sometimes people are already involved with those already, and it has to be a matter of time management, I think, to make sure people come along and pick up the training. If someone absolutely cannot attend whatever for a particular reason, if they miss it, if they're taken ill, if they've got COVID and can't come along, then we'd have to make some other provision so that there can't be anything. But the expectation has to be, I think, that people do come along for these training sessions.
I think, if I may, I think it would end up being the same as what happens when we have a by-election. So when we have a by-election, I sit down with a new councillor, and over about 2 hours, we go through pretty much everything that you get on the induction programme. But it's a bit sterile because it's just me talking at somebody. That you really benefit from the relationships and the interactions with other councillors and the questions that come up and such like. So there is a lot to be gained from attending those sessions. But if, as Councillor Mallender says, that if somebody for whatever reason really could not attend and there was nothing anybody could do about it, then we would of course make sure that they got the training. It wouldn't be as effective because it's always going to be a plan B. Okay, so what I'm getting is we quite like the condensed
Yeah, really
three
good.
session, we're happy to go with that, which is great. I'm really pleased about that. What that's meant is that a lot of the training that we've taken out of the induction programme now falls into what we're classifying as a medium term training programme. So straight after we've delivered the induction, we'll move into ordinary training, but it will be front loaded with things like planning and licensing, the stuff that you really need straight up to start commenting on planning applications, to sit on committees, and to make sure that new councillors are aware of what they're getting themselves into when we get to nominations for annual council, because that's going to happen very, very quickly after the election. So paragraph 4.10 just really looks at that immediate training period, which we're really thinking probably goes between June and December of next year. So it covers really a lot of information about the different committees and groups that we have, how they operate, why you would be on them, and how to get the most out of participating in those. Most of which will be run internally by councillors, but of course East Midlands councils have their own training programme that picks up on quite a lot of stuff straight after the election as well. So
Sorry. 4.10, last but one, understanding and making the most of motions. That's terribly important. You know, somebody pops up and says something that hold on a minute, I don't know where we are, you know. And I was lucky when I was mayor, because some of the meetings can be quite fraught and getting all political, you know, and you don't know where you are. So you really need to sort of warn people, because it can be really dodgy. Okay, and you vote and then you think, oh God, I didn't mean to vote for that. Yes.
well, thankfully, we now have some very well developed motions training, both for officers and for councillors. And of course, if you think about the way the meetings will run next year, we'll have annual council in May, but our first real council doesn't come until the beginning of July. So we've got time to get that training in and make sure that people are aware of what's going to happen. But there's also, you've got to bear in mind that you can give everybody the training until they've actually seen it in action. It doesn't kind of come alive. It doesn't make sense. So actually, it may well be that we give them some basic understanding, then they experience it and get that feeling, and then we actually go through the training and say, right, this is what's going on in this, because it will make more sense once they've seen it for the first time. So don't worry if things don't quite work out the way that you think they might do. Sometimes it's better for it to come afterwards when people have got an understanding of what it is.
Yeah, I think with this one there is also, and I know it's not applicable to every councillor, but there is a role for the various political groups on the council here as well, or even without, if we're all independents, a role for, perhaps I should say, for councillors who've been around the block a few times, to actually explain and help new councillors to understand what these various committees are. If you were sort of rocking up for the first time and said, do you want to be on standards committee? Would anybody know what that was? Would they have an understanding of it? Whereas some of us who've been on that for a while would have an understanding of it, and sort of would be, you know, well placed to explain how it works, what it does, that kind of thing. So I think there is a role here for returning councillors to help with that, and sort of get that information across to the new people and let them understand what they might, you know, expand on their areas of interest and what might best fit. For the smaller groups, well, we're not on it. We're not on all of the other committees anyway, and so it probably be more of a one-to-one thing.
Okay, in that case,
Okay, no, there.
just going to move on. So I've just highlighted a couple more things. So paragraph 4.12, we've identified a few topics where we think actually, rather than running a long-winded training session on this, it actually makes more sense to either have a written how-to document that people can just follow, or potentially using our colleagues in comms come up with a short video. You know, for example, what we've done this evening with the single sign-on to e-learning. Actually, if one of you wanted to star in a 45-second video just showing somebody and talking through, well, you just click here, then you click here, this is what it's showing, you just click that and you're done. Now that could actually be quite a powerful tool, and we've taken away the need to provide another training session. So there will be some suggestions of those coming forward, and if you've got any thoughts about those, that would also be really helpful. In terms of how you as councillors can help, as well as coming up with ideas, it's also about encouraging people to come along, and for yourselves, come along, meet people, get involved. If we're looking for volunteers to, share your views, share what it was like for you, speaking positively about training and the induction programme can make a massive difference both to new councillors and also within your groups. So it's about moving forward now with training and the induction programme going forward. So I think I've summarised all of the points that I've raised in paragraph 4.15, but I think we've probably covered them unless anybody has anything else to say.
So these videos, would it include the members of this group? So, seriously, it may be, whether we're elected or not, or standing or not next time round, it might be useful for us to put a few things down, some of the ideas, some of our experiences in video clips that we could have available for people in the future who are returning. It would, if we did them now, it would be less pressure on officers to try and sort these things out immediately after the election. They don't have to be used if we didn't want them to be afterwards, but it might be something that we could do that could help. Thoughts? Councillor Phillips?
Yes, I like the idea of the video clips, and one that would be really helpful, I think, for new councillors is maybe one on planning. So where you open the planning application, you'll see existing sort of plans and then proposed. Keep it nice and simple. I know a lot of them aren't simple, but just so that person looking at it for the first time gets an idea. That's how the house looks now. This is how it's going to look with the extension, and any shadowing or anything like that you could include in that video clip, and then go to the consultee comments, and it just shows them where to go then, rather than looking all over a screen. I think that's a really good idea, the clips.
Councillor Williams, you're volunteering to do the video clips?
I don't mind. I can do. Not a problem. I was just, and it's just took me a bit of what I was just kind of going through all the different bullet points and that, and like the session 2, it says about it's touching on with scrutiny in the matrix. Is there actually any other training to go in depth on scrutiny, or is it kind of just, is that going to be in that session, that, because I know it's going to be talking about the meetings and the structure and how they work and that, but like we had the scrutiny training face to face, is there going to be kind of that put into the medium term, or is it going to be kind of covered in that session? Because it was really useful for.
No, I mean, we've had quite a lot of scrutiny training over the last 3 years. So specifically, I know that I did a session in the induction, which was the basics. We had somebody from East Midlands Councils come along and do some more in-depth scrutiny training. And since then, I've certainly done a session on the matrix, a session on good questioning skills, and how to, it will be a case of pulling those things together and actually putting them forward either in the induction programme or in the sort of the medium-term training. So the medium-term training's definitely got at least one session on scrutiny and scrutiny skills that will kind of umbrella everything together. If we then find as we go through that we need more in-depth training on, debate or scrutiny or anything like that, then we can actually put that into the longer-term programme moving forward from 2024 onwards.
Yeah, I think it's important that people understand that scrutiny is not just an oppositional role, and it's something that councillors from all the groups on the council should be involved in, to have a different point of view or to give extra consideration to something. because it can often be seen as just a purely opposition point of view, and it really shouldn't be. And I think that's something that needs to be put across to newer councillors to help them understand that.
Just on that point, Chair, if I may, another one that occurs to us is chairing skills. Now, at the moment, we don't run chairing skills training here. We tend to send people, for example, in your position, Councillor Williams, who are newly appointed chair, go on East Midlands Council's chairing training. Well, that's good, but it doesn't tend to happen before your first meeting. And so you're left a little bit in the dark. You pick it up as you go along, and by the time the training comes along, you've got it. Actually, if we offered it in-house and we said, right, this is for all chairmen, and if you want to, at any point in the next 4 years, you're thinking that you might like this role, please put yourself forward for the training, get trained up, because then group leaders have got a pool of people who are already trained and ready, and it shows them that you're ambitious and you would like to move forward on that, and it's another string to your bow. So it's just about presenting those opportunities in a slightly more positive way. But it's not something that you have to do because you have a role. It's something that we'd like you to do to develop your skills.
Okay, that sounds a good idea. We all have to sign up for that now. Okay, so I think we've kicked that one around quite a bit. Just move on. There's just a bit about additional content ideas for the handbook, feedback. We've dealt with quite a lot of this as well. Has anybody got any other observations or suggestions for the programme? I think what we've got there is quite good. I think it's quite distinct in the way we're looking to handle it. There will be issues throughout the process, I've no doubt, but I'm sure we can pick those up. I do think there is a big thing that has to help with us about hand-holding new councillors as well, in a non-patronising way, and hope that people don't see it that way, because it can be quite an alien world to people who have not been involved with local government before, and quite a sort of strange way of working, and people won't be necessarily accustomed to it. And I think we do hold a role in assisting with that, as well as giving the formal training as well. So if we don't have anything else to add, I feel we've kicked these issues around quite a lot. Are people happy to? We've got the recommendations, which are to discuss the proposals for the 2023 induction programme, put forward any ideas or suggestions to officers at the meeting to increase councillor engagement in the induction programme. I feel we've discussed that quite a bit. As ever, if anybody sort of suddenly thinks afterwards, oh, that's something I should have said, please do feed that back, because we always come up with our ideas throughout the days as well. So are people happy to agree the recommendation? Please see. Okay, thank you very much. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time this evening, everyone. Thank you, anyone who's been watching as well. And